Welcome, everyone. My name is Jacob. Thank you for joining me. This is Hunt Detail, and we are in late July, and it's hard to believe how quickly things are moving, how quickly things are coming. If you're planning any sort of out-of-state hunts, there's lots of e-scouting to do. If you're hunting in September, whether it's for whitetail or elk or something, there's a lot of tuning, bow tuning, and getting your practice, getting things sighted in, tweaking your gear. For me, I'm trying to, continue to elevate my endurance and get in even better shape as I get ready for my elk hunt in September. And time is just of essence. And there's so many commitments as we enter back to school if you have children, and there's a lot of logistics there and a lot of responsibilities at home. And it's just really an exciting time, but it's a time crunch because finding time to do all the things that you want to do as you prepare for the upcoming season, at least for me, is difficult. But it's, I hate in many ways that the days are going to start getting shorter. I hate in many ways that, seasons come and seasons go. But I am excited about what this hunting season will bring. Today we're going to talk a little bit. Well, we're going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about the future of cell cams and specifically the apps that accompany them. Last week's episode, I went through a ranking of different cellular trail cams, and I will say it was all based on specs that they push on, that they have listed online. So, and as you know, specs can be exaggerated, the truth can be stretched. So if you're making final purchase decisions on, my rankings, I would encourage you before you do so is to go to some message boards, ask some folks about what their experiences have been with a particular trail cam, with like the Multi-Mobile products, with the Tacticam, with the Spy Point, with the Exodus, with some of these other options out there, because ultimately their experiences are going to help, share with what reality really is, because it might not be 32 megapixels. It might be something more grainy. It might not be 100-foot range. It might be much, much less. So there's a lot of dynamics there. And of course, the cellular side of things is, it could be inconsistent as well. I mean, the transmission of the pictures is not something that is really well known until you set it up and try it out. So that's why it's important to talk to other folks about that. But as I was looking at the different options, one thing that became very evident was the fact that the apps that accompany these cell phone or these cell cams can be a real difference maker. I think as we move into the next phase of this product category, I mean, first they hit the market, several years ago. They were expensive, and then you had data plans, and those are expensive, and now those things are starting to even out. The price points in some ways are starting to even out for the cameras themselves. The price points for the data plans are becoming more and more, I would say, affordable or consumer friendly. And in the past, the apps seemed to be just sort of a management tool or a setup tool. So it's like, okay, I buy the cellular cam, I put it up on a tree, I can now set, the number of the photo burst, the frequency that these pics are sent, and some of the other parameters that I want, or maybe it's just I want video, that sort of thing. And now you're starting to see, or you have seen in the past couple of years, it's like, okay, now you can categorize your pictures, you can tag certain animals, you can have AI start to identify buck or doe, so you can sort of sort and filter for you want to just see pictures of bucks, and the AI feature of technology can help sort through that. You can do some different things with the data in that regard. And one of the things that I talked about and I want to talk about more is when you look at the different predictive modeling that is out there for hunters to use. Like, and I mentioned DeerCast. DeerCast is a product of Drury, Drury Outdoors. And DeerCast is essentially, I think it's Mark Drury's, maybe it's Mark and Terry, but it seems like Mark Drury talks a lot about changes in weather, this degree of temperature drop, this moon phase, this adjustment in barometric pressure. He has highlighted several times, and he's been very public about the things that he feels like causes deer to move from bed to feed or feed to bed at different times of different days. Maybe it's at right after a storm, that sort of thing. And so DeerCast is a predictive model that they designed and is available nationwide. And what it does is it incorporates your local weather using a particular forecast model. Now, I've looked at the different forecast models that are out there for weather apps. You can find that on the Hunt Detail YouTube channel. I feel like there are some weather apps that are better than others because they give you access to a lot of those different forecast models, not just one forecast model. And so check that out, when you can. But, that is a forecast model that is out there it used to be associated with OnX. You could get it for free, and then it broke off and have made it a subscription. I personally don't use it. I think it's interesting. I like to look at those things. I'm primarily interested in the weather patterns myself, but I don't necessarily use predictive models that are out there. Another predictive model that's out there is on the Spartan Forge app. And my understanding is that they've taken published data that's out there from different universities or different organizations and use that to help create their predictive modeling. And so I think the idea here is that it's more accurate, it's based in science, and it might even be more regional, whether, with data coming out of the southeast versus data that comes out of the northeast versus data that comes out of the west. Now, I don't, again, care about some of these modeling things. I think that's nice. It's interesting. But it's not something that I would use personally. The HuntWise also, and this is another, Spartan Forge and HuntWise are both sort of map app platforms. You can see my thoughts on the Hunt Detail channel on that, as those platforms as well. But HuntWise I love as an app, but they also have a predictive modeling tool as well. And I think what's interesting is that they have it for not only whitetail, but they have it for elk and bear and all that stuff. And I'd love to learn more about that, but it's very similar, I would say, to what DeerCast has put together. It's somebody has put a set of inputs in to say, if the temperature drops by this amount and the barometric pressure changes by this, and there's this moon phase with this amount of wind, miles per hour, if you put those variables together, their belief is that deer movement or animal movement is going to increase. And so I think, again, those things are neat, not something that I use. But where am I going with this is, well, I think that if you look at what Moultrie Mobile has called the game plan, and I've seen just a little bit of information on this. They just have a short video that's on YouTube and a little bit of information online. I think the idea here is to take the inputs from your local area and create modeling based on your inputs. which is pictures and movement of deer on your properties. And so if you can think about it on a micro level, I put out 10 to 15 cellular cams on, let's say, I don't know, 100 acres. I don't know. And maybe it's private property. I guess it could be public. Obviously, there's a risk there. But you put those out and you mark those on this game plan app. And then now you're getting, if you're using some sort of AI technology to determine if it's doe or buck, you're getting that data. Let's just say it's a particular buck, and he's moving across 3 or 4 of those cams that, based on a particular wind, temperature, moon phase, barometric pressure, all of those inputs, then all of a sudden you're able to use your own local intel and local data to create a predictive model and to get a sense of where and when this particular buck, or maybe you're hunting several different bucks, when and how they're moving. Now that would make a lot of sense, to make this more on a more granular level, to have that data local. And think about it from a consumer standpoint. If I'm able to do that on a particular app with a particular brand, then all of a sudden I almost care a lot less about the how much I'm paying for data and how much I pay for the camera and some of the other specs that I mentioned in the previous podcast. All of a sudden I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I can get this local intel to, and I know that there are other apps out there, tools, resources that have been developed by other people where you can sort of put in some of this data, into some sort of platform. And I can't think of there's one that I used to be aware of, but now to have it integrated with the cell camera where you're not actually putting that data in, it's collecting it for you, it's calculating it for you, and giving you the information, and for your 100 acres, I think is really, really interesting. And I guess it also creates stickiness to that particular brand and that product line. All of a sudden, even if it's a little bit of an inferior product, the app does something different than the cell cam. It enhances it in a way that makes me not want to change from it. And that's where I really see things. And I think that there's got to be a real race in the app for this, or not in the app, but in this marketplace for this sort of technology. So, or for this sort of capability. If there's not, then I would have a real, I have a feeling that particular those cell cams that don't offer an app of this nature are going to go extinct. And so I'll pick on like Stealth Cam or Covert. Like I really wasn't impressed with the information that they had. Not Stealth Cam, I'm sorry, Spartan Cam. Or Covert is one in particular. I mentioned this in last week's podcast. Like the information on the app for Covert cameras is 7 years old on YouTube. I couldn't find anything relevant or new. I don't think that there was anything on the website either. So there was just again, as you look at this space, if you're gonna invest in a set of cell cams, I would take a harder look at the apps than I would look at almost the bottom line price point, because long term, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, how is that fleet of cell cams going to operate to best help me in my hunt or my hunts? And so, I just and I'll give you some that come to my mind. Obviously, the Moultrie. I think Tacticam, is one. I think I'm really interested to see what the Exodus trail cameras app look like. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I haven't seen an official release from them yet, but I think that there's an opportunity there. Um, I think, I mean, I mentioned Moultrie, I mentioned Tacticam, Exodus. I think Spy Point. I didn't get a strong sense of that the app was really robust. I think I gave it a decent score. I think Bushnell would be one that I would look at. Bushnell ranked lower because of a variety of factors, one of which was at least that particular camera I looked at was $300 as the suggested retail price. So, at $300, it's really an outlier within this category when you look at some of the other brands that have high end cameras at 140, 150 bucks, and that Bushnell was 300 bucks. So I think it'll be interesting to see the Bushnell app and how that evolves. I would keep an eye on that app. There's a company that I just was made aware of with cell cams called WiseEye. And some folks seem to be really passionate about that brand. And sometimes you have to be careful with what you see on these Facebook groups in terms of people talking about particular brands, because they may be not employees, but sort of brand sponsors or part of the pro team or whatever. And they're just spitting out like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. I've seen a lot of that stuff. And so you do a couple of clicks on their profile and you realize that they have a reason why they're promoting a particular brand. But I've heard a lot of things about WiseEye as a brand to look at. Now, I did not include them in my evaluation, but I would encourage you to check them out. And again, go on the message board, see if you can get some legitimate feedback, hopefully not feedback from folks that are affiliated with them. One of the things that I've talked about in the past, and I'll touch on it a little bit here, is how AI or artificial intelligence could impact hunting in the future. And if you're familiar with Moore's law, it's basically that technology is doubling at a sort of an exponential rate at this point, and we see it and we feel it. And if you think about where cell cams were even just a few years ago and where they are now, if you think about where some of the technology that you use today or the information, if I think about some of the information that's available to me that wasn't available just 5 short years ago, it's really kind of scary to think about where technology is going to go. And if you look at AI, and I mentioned it with regards to the integration of cell cams, but if you think about it, like if you played around with ChatGPT, artificial intelligence is there's really sort of 6 components to it. It's sensing, it's reasoning, it's acting, it's assessing, it's inferring, and it's also trying to predict. And I think that where artificial intelligence could go is to be a personal helper in the field in addition to on your laptop, where you're actually taking real-time pictures of tracks or rubs, and it's actually evaluating the temperature and the age of that track and projecting a size of the animal that made that based on the impression in the mud or the size of the rub. It's giving you an idea of what made that. Artificial intelligence could in real time hack maybe cell cam data, and it could assess information on hunting forums about a particular location, and it could assess information from local automobile accidents on prevalence of deer, and it could look at tag records on a particular state, and then on a county level, and then in many ways sort of tell you where to hunt. It could evaluate mapping location, live satellite feeds, or even just Google Earth, and look at potential bedding areas and give you the top three based on the sign that you find in the field. And so it is a little, I'm not trying to go off the rails here, but when you think about cellular cam technology, when you think about artificial intelligence, where you think about the convergence of all this technology and where it takes us with hunting, it's not necessarily a pretty place. And it's not, I mean, it sounds kind of fun, and it might not help you actually kill that buck, but it could increase it by a couple percentage points if it helps you with with this convergence and evaluation, and doing some of the things that I mentioned, like predictive modeling. So anyways, that's we'll sort of wrap this up with that. But technology and hunting is a real deal, and just take a look at how other industries are using it, and it can tell you a little bit more about what will see with how technology impacts hunting. So best of luck this week in your endeavors, and we'll chat again next week. All the best.